Greetings, YouTube. Have you ever wondered if these old CCD cameras like this Nikon D200 produce more natural and organic colors than modern cameras? Well, come here, bring a chair, and stick around because this might surprise you. So I bought this Nikon D200 out of intrigue, really. I was curious because it's often stated that these old CCD cameras produce more vibrant and organic and natural colors when compared to modern cameras with their CMOS sensors, which are stated to have a more sterile appearance. And as a landscape photographer, the idea of more natural and vibrant colors is a really intriguing prospect for me because I could really bring a lot of personality to my photographs. All right, so to really put this color claim to the test, I took my Nikon D200, my Nikon Z50, and my heavy-duty tripod to the local flower shop and took some photographs of some colorful subjects. So there are many factors besides the camera sensor that affect the final look of the image, such as the chosen camera profile of the camera, or one camera's software may make different photographic decisions than the other with like exposure, white balance, and tint. And using Nikon's RAW format allowed me to better test later the effect that different camera profiles had on the color rendition between the two cameras. And lastly, the only post-processing I did was some minor adjustments to white balance, tint, and exposure so that all was the same between the two different cameras. All right, so let's jump into Lightroom and check out some of these colorful photographs. All right, so let's start off by looking at these images of these golden roses here. And to start off, both images were captured in the individual camera standard profile for each camera. And as we can see here, these images look nearly identical. If you look really closely at the left image, the Nikon D200 image, we can kind of see that, yeah, maybe there is a bit more color saturation in the flower petals, like with the yellow and orange hues. You know, and many people say that these old CCD sensors produce a bit better color differentiation than the modern sensors with like subtle hues of color. And, you know, maybe that is going on here because if you look at the petal, it does kind of look like there's some more subtle, fainter hues of color that we don't see on the image on the right, whereas the image on the right looks a little bit less soft and a bit sharper perhaps. But to be honest, like these images to me look nearly identical and I wouldn't notice much of a difference unless I compared them left to right and basically pixel peep them, showing that, you know, really the Nikon D200 is standing up to the modern sensor quite well when it's shot under ideal lighting conditions like here. All right, so things get really interesting now when we actually switch the camera profile over to Adobe Color, which is one of Lightroom's internal camera profiles, and that's applied to both images now. So the image on the left of the Nikon D200 got a lot darker and a lot more orangey tinted, whereas the Nikon Z50 on the right got a lot lighter and less saturated. And that's interesting because this really shows how much the camera profile is actually affecting the final appearance of the image. And honestly, in this comparison, I like the Nikon Z50 image better because I think it's actually a more neutral starting point for further image processing. And that makes sense because I think Adobe Color is pretty much optimized for modern sensors these days. All right, so let's look at these images now, these pelargonium flowers. And again, I'm starting off with this comparison with the camera standard profile for each photograph. And if we narrow on the Nikon D200 image on the left and look at the red color and the flower petals, you know, I think the red color takes on a bit more of a classic red look. Whereas if you look at the Nikon Z50 one on the right, the reds take on a bit more of like a pink and purple hue to them. And I also think that the pinks and purples on the right side are a bit more saturated as well. And in this particular comparison, I kind of like the one on the left from the Nikon D200. I think it looks a bit more natural to my eye. All right, switching over to the Adobe Color profile now produces, again, very interesting results when comparing to the first set of flowers. In this particular comparison, I actually think that the flowers look remarkably similar. It's the green foliage that changed. On the left from the Nikon D200, that color saturation in the greens was really retained, whereas on the right side, there's a lot less color saturation in the greens and it also got lighter as well. I do actually think it's possible that the Z50 image is a more neutral starting place to start from, but in this particular comparison, I like the photograph from the Nikon D200. I think it's a bit more vibrant and natural looking. All right, so one more final image comparison for you guys. And this is actually not of flowers, but of a mountain ridge. And the reason why I wanted to add this comparison is because this was taken under some very stressful conditions for the sensor, with the very bright sun coming through the mountains and some darker shadows in the foregrounds. Again, I'm starting off the Nikon camera standard profile for each image. And to be honest, looking image left to right, I don't see any significant differences in color that are worth remarking on. What's actually shocking to me here is just how much the Nikon D200 image on the left is able to match up to the Nikon Z50 image taken with a modern sensor. If I look closely at the Nikon Z50, I can kind of see that there's maybe some more subtleties in the highlights and shadows, maybe of color as well, but those differences are very small. It's really shocking to me how much the Nikon D200 image is actually able to match up to the Nikon Z50 image. All right, so switching over to the Adobe color profile now for both photographs yields very interesting results. The image on the left from the Nikon D200 is rendered a bit more orangey and darker, like before of the previous comparisons. And the image on the right was rendered a bit more lighter and less saturated. And in this particular comparison, I kind of think that the Nikon Z50 image is a bit more of a neutral starting place to start from for further image processing. And I actually think that I like the Nikon Z50 image better because I like that there's a bit more contrast between the lighter greens and then the orangey reds from the sun. All right, so do CCD sensors produce more vibrant, natural, and organic colors than modern sensors? Well, to be totally honest, it's hard to be 100% sure because as we saw doing this analysis, the camera profile selected had a very significant impact on how these images ended up being rendered, really coloring the analysis, pun intended. Utilizing the Nikon camera standard profiles, I found that I slightly preferred the results coming from the Nikon D200. I thought that maybe they were a bit more color saturated. I liked the color tonality a bit more. I thought the images were maybe a bit softer and a bit more organic looking. But again, those differences were very subtle. And it makes sense that these images do look so similar because with the camera standard profiles, Nikon takes the sensor data from these different cameras and aligns it to a particular target that Nikon has to achieve a particular look. So they should look similar by design. However, when we switched over to Adobe color profile, the images were rendered very differently in color. It really does seem that Adobe color is optimized for giving a neutral starting point for modern sensors. So overall, I do think there may be some merit to actually saying that these old CCD sensors produce more vibrant, natural, and organic colors than modern sensors, though subtle. However, I find myself wondering if when people have previously done this analysis, if they've taken cameras from different camera manufacturers or even within the same camera manufacturer. Because as we saw doing this analysis, it was really the camera profile that had the most significant impact on the final look of the image. So after going through this analysis with me, I'm generally curious what you guys think as well. Let me know in the comment section what you noticed from these comparisons, and let me know what your personal experiences with your own gear. And lastly, if you disagree with anything I said, also let me know in the comment section. Hey, so thanks for taking some time out of your day to watch my video. I hope you found some of the content in this video really valuable and intriguing. If you did, leave a like. It really helps out my channel. Also, if you'd like to check out more content like this, subscribe to my channel. And lastly, if you'd like to check out some of my photographic work, see the website in the description below. Hope to see you in another video.